the integrity song. You know the integrity song? If you cannot remember the words, I'll want you to just hum. Kenya yangu na. You remember it, eh? Kenya yangu naipenda nachukia ufisadi waharibu nchi yetu tuangamize ufisadi. You know it? That is Kenya's integrity song. That Kenya is my country and I love it. I detest corruption. It destroys the country. Let us all destroy corruption. That's the first stanza. I'll ask them to stand towards the end after we have talked. Thank you so much for honoring my request for you to be upstanding. I'll ask it later. You can take it. But you need a lot. Those ones. If there are issues you may want to highlight. Ladies and gentlemen, I have come here to look at the topic on enforcing good governance and zero tolerance for corruption. In this presentation, I was advised by APAM that I can make a shorter presentation, but the notes I give you be comprehensive. That's what I've done here. The ones that will be given to us will be comprehensive, but this is for purposes of this presentation so that we fit into the time. We are looking traditionally at terms that we're going to use in this situation, then an introduction to the topic corruption, factors that contribute to corruption, preventing and combating corruption. Then because they have a notebook. Those ones. Give me a notebook. Yeah. For you. We look at the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. Then I also have the UN one. The reason why I have brought here the African one, I have told you APAM. APAM is recognized by the African Union and exists under STC number 8, the Subcommittee on Public Service and the Administration. So they have a responsibility of promoting charters and any other conventions at the African Union level. This thing called corruption. Transparency International defines corruption as the abuse of power to promote private benefits. So as private sector corruption would fall outside the direct scope of public finance management reforms, in our case, we are focusing on corruption in the public sector, where somebody like me would use the office you have to get benefit. Until 2 years ago, I was holding an office that was the focal point for scholarships from development partners. Before the year 2013, I used to be given Kenyan shillings 500 million every year to sponsor people who wanted to do master's degrees and PhD. If you came to the office, we would give you that, until we had to come up with procedures of having that approved, because you can easily abuse office. People would bring you gifts, they give you money, and there are other forms of benefit you'd get. So how do you survive in that office? I told you Alex and I have a background of childhood Christianity, where to live a life of austerity is not acceptable. We espouse simple lives. Even if your property, let not everybody, the property is supposed to be for service. Because of faith, we belong to the Christian faith. The fact that Jesus Christ did not leave any property that you can associate him with is about values. So it is from the upbringing. If you come to me and you give me a gift because I supported you, you feel very embarrassed. And therefore we grow up with a belief that if you take your children to school using proceeds of corruption, your child is cursed. If you put up a house using proceeds of corruption, when you sleep in that house and you pray, remember this is theft. That's what you should be saying. If you buy clothes out of proceeds of corruption, it should hound you. When you have a vehicle that you bought out of proceeds of corruption, remember you are a thief. If you are an engineer in charge of roads that were supposed to be constructed, but materials were not all given because you wanted part of the cart, and people die in accidents because of potholes, because of poor workmanship, you are a murderer. So that is how I was brought up. I derive a lot of pressure in supporting children who are orphaned because my last born is 24 years today. She left university when she was very young, and she manages her life. The others got married. So at my age, I'm still very young. When we retire in Kenya at the age of 60, you still have 35 years to live. If Daniel Arab Moi in Kenya here had a life of hardship as a child, and he lived up nearly 100 years. If Nelson Mandela was incarcerated for 27 years, despite that suffering, he still lived into the 90s. Why not me? So after 60, I still have at least 35 years to live. Who am I living for? One of my children, the ones I've been supporting, is graduating on Friday. Their parents died of HIV and AIDS. So I started supporting them in high school, and he's gone to university. The brother will be graduating next month. He was doing pure chemistry. There's one who was doing software engineering. He graduated in December. A number of them. They give you a lot of happiness when you realize that you helped somebody who would not have gone to school. I don't have a lot of material wealth. I lived here, and we bought a plot in a place called Bamburi. A long time ago, we bought a plot for 300,000 shillings to my wife. She was actually instrumental. My contribution was 100. She's the one who raised 200. I was very reluctant to have that plot developed. She took a loan and started off the foundation of a house. We have tenants there who live there. We moved from here and went to Nairobi. We stayed in Nairobi. We had put up a house in our father's compound, but we bought our own land to put up a retirement home because we will be retiring when the children are mature. So you don't require a storied house because you can't go upstairs beyond 60 years. It must be a simple 3-bedroom bungalow with a guest wing and your own room. Old people. There must be water and electricity. We acquired a house in Nairobi, in Lavington, out of benefits of long service from government. You don't need a Mercedes-Benz. You require a small vehicle that can take you to the church and to the market. Because we come from Western Kenya going towards Uganda, when you want to go home because of age, you don't drive all the way from Nairobi to Kisumu. Take a flight from Nairobi, Wilson Airport, go to Kisumu, and get a self-drive car hire. It's 3,000 shillings a day. For 5 days, it's 15,000 shillings. Fuel of 3,000 is enough to keep you at home. So you require 18, You drive the vehicle into home, and you can only use it if you're going to the church for the 5 days, or if you're going to the nearest town to buy something. You don't need to show off. But you lead a life that is comfortable. If we want to go home, we can book from Wilson Airport. Safari Link is from 4,500 if you book very early to Kisumu. We don't need big things. You require money. Those of you who are retiring in Kenya, there is an association of retired officers in Kenya called CARO. If you're a member of CARO, you can actually pay to an NHIF. Medical insurance premium of 120,000 shillings is a one-off, and they cover you for life. They have an inpatient cover of around 2 million shillings, and outpatient of 600 for retired officers. Because when you retire after 65 years, insurance companies don't like insuring you. So what we require in our age is not our children giving us money. We require medical insurance. In Kenya today, a pensioner at very high level, when you retire after tax, you have a pension of over 150,000 shillings. Daktari, can you survive? Yeah. So why do you want to accumulate? Why do you want to steal the whole world from everybody? Why? Then you walk around and tell people you are successful, that you went to school to become a thief. You are supposed to be a creator of knowledge, a transmitter of knowledge, but you are a thief. Primitive accumulation, even wild animals don't do that. They don't snatch all the food for themselves, unless even the hyenas, when they snatch, they eat. You steal from the people you are supposed to serve. Then you say you are successful. You are condemned for life. And 4 generations after you are condemned. Ladies and gentlemen, the audience I want to talk to must be one that has accepted this. The abuse of public power to promote private benefit. You are the director of this place. When contractors come to this site, you want to do something of 200,000 shillings, you tell them, no. You can write a letter for review, of course, escalation clause in the contract, so that this thing becomes 500. The cost has not changed from 200. It is 200, but you want it 500. It's not even the contractor who is asking. The person who is asking for that to be revised is a public officer, you and I. So that is abuse of office. I know Kenyans are here. You remember the case of a director who was inviting a young girl to go to his office on the promise of a job. And he would tell the girl to come at 4, she comes at 4, he keeps up to 5, he says, not today, you come tomorrow. So one time she went, and at 7, he said, for me to do this, I must have sex. And he took her into a lift, a government VIP lift, after people had left office. When fellows who maintain lifts came around to check, the lift was just moving up and down. They opened, and this gentleman was naked. In that place with a girl, the age of his daughter. Sex to promise a job. You are still abusing office. Dealing with the contractors so they give you money. People paying you so they give them opportunities. You are abusing office. That is the definition of, there's this one here that corruption is opportunity plus incentive. There must be an incentive for you to want to practice corruption. Minus sanctions. If you think nothing is going to happen, then you will take it. So, where are the deterrents against this thing in the public service? For example, I come from a community, during traditional circumcision, one of the vows you take is that you cannot sleep with somebody's wife. It is forbidden, it's an abomination for you to sleep with somebody's wife. So you are told to take a vow. Because if you must have wives, marry, but don't take somebody's wife. So it's the same thing we need to have in the public service, that we are taking vows that we shall not steal. Thus, a public employee who abuses his or her public position to derive benefits for oneself or friends, relatives, or political associates is engaging in an act of corruption. We work in offices where people ask, at this office where you have been, how many people from home have you assisted? When you tell them, when the jobs are advertised by the Public Service Commission online, you apply. If you qualify, you will be taken. You can't be taken. You must speak to somebody. Even yesterday, there's a professor who called me and told me he has applied for the position of a Deputy Vice Chancellor, DVC. Do you know somebody in the commission to talk to them? You are a professor, and the advert requires an associate professor, and you are an associate professor. Why don't you allow that competition to just proceed? And talk to somebody, tell him, in fact, we can talk. So even you and I who are asked such requests, to enable somebody to pay a bribe to access opportunities like those ones, we are corrupt. Let them call you bad names, but don't be associated with facilitating things that are not right. When you retire, you go home, they say, this one had an office, he never used it. You wasted. If you come from Kenya, they say, uko mjinga kama Mukamba na Muluya. Ati Wakamba na Waluhya ni watu wajinga. Akipata pesa atarudishia mwenyewe. There is a Somali boy, recently you saw it in the social media. A customer forgot a lot of money in his vehicle. Tuk-tuk. Then he looked for that person, he looked for a number because she went to a particular place and they were able to get her number. And that money was returned. The Somalis across the world, by Friday last week, had raised over, actually the equivalent of 10 million Kenyan shillings now. They were giving money to a number to appreciate uprightness. Can you imagine if I worked and I was a thief, I would be looking older than this age. You are retired, you have no stress, you have no small child, you have nobody's dead. Yours is just to eat and sleep and go to church on Sunday and sing. And to be invited by Julie to come and talk, to be invited by the school to do activities for them, to do work for the World Bank and UNDP around here. That is what we should be aspiring for. Not all cases of corruption involve payment of bribes. It's even the use of public resources to reward you. You are in charge of land, so we give you land because you promoted something, you did something that was illegal, and somebody who has power over land gives it to you as a form of appreciation. You are a thief. Getting certificates because exams were stolen for you. Or there is a case today, those of you who come from Kenya, you know of an ongoing case of a very senior person, a holder of a public office as a manager HR, whose bachelor's degree is non-existing, master's degree is non-existing. You have seen the case. A wife of a very senior person and a sister of a minister is ongoing. Will that minister have a face? Did he know that his sister did not have a degree? How could she have taken up a position of an HR manager in a state corporation where the requirement was a master's degree, and he knew the sister did not have a first degree and a master's degree? How? There are two forms of corruption I want to look at here. We have one called bureaucratic corruption. Corruption that is process-based. It occurs during the course of everyday government activity. Is there anybody here from the National Audit Office? National Kenya National Audit Office? The office here, Auditor General. I have a case in a situation like that. There was a time I got a request in the ministry. The PS called me and said, this person has a request to go and do a master's degree in public audit in the US. It was very expensive, but we had money. So I advised that an individual person cannot come to you here. They make the request through their own permanent secretary in the ministry. Their committees process that request, and if they find it's useful, because other people must be given equal opportunity in that ministry to make similar requests, it is then forwarded, and citing a minute of the training committee. If it comes to our PS, the PS will mark it to us, and we shall assess and say, based on section 34 of the training policy, the Kenya government commits itself to support development of capacities in areas where we have high priority and scarce skills. This is an example of one. PS, based on policy, and also the Constitution now, we quote the relevant sections of the Constitution. We have no objection to this ministry offering to sponsor that student for a master's degree or a PhD. Funds are available. The PS will then give us authority and we go ahead. But you see, there's a risk. There is a risk that we can manipulate the systems. Instead of that ministry holding a meeting, we can actually collude with the director of administration in a meeting, in a ministry, and the people in charge of training, the HR. And they have fake minutes. And when the fake minutes come from the ministry now, with things are in order, our peers will not know that it's fake. Even if I did that, that is still corruption. Knowingly that this person has been given an unfair advantage over other people in that ministry. We had the powers to look at persons coming. There was somebody from Moyale. He was a Karba. The Karbas are very few in the Kenyan population. At the time this person was applying for a master's degree to go to the US, he had a partial scholarship. We had 165 Karbas in the civil service. And this one had done a bachelor's degree. When he came, we said, this one must be supported. He comes from an area that is marginalized. But that is an opportunity also for me to make money from the parents if they can give me one camel. You know, a camel is very expensive. We come across such opportunities in public service. The processes. Bureaucratic corruption is a form of corruption that has the most immediate impact on the day-to-day lives of people. You want electricity, you bribe. You want water connected, you bribe. You want a passport, you bribe. Whatever you want is bribery. You want a certificate, go to the Commissioner for Universities Education. If you got your degree from outside Kenya, your certificate must be accredited. It requires 10,000 shillings and you allow them 5 days. But can we talk to somebody so that this thing is made faster? I want it today. That's if you want it today, you know, we have protocols. I don't know. I can talk to somebody. That's how we say in the civil service. I can talk to somebody to fasten the process. That is bureaucratic. You and I are most likely to be involved in bureaucratic corruption. The processes we manage, giving us an opportunity to make money. I am afraid of your pointer because it was causing me confusion. I am very comfortable doing it manually now. Because I have control. It's not going to jump. You know, this is now our tradition. You know, our group that did not begin with the computers, we are very, very particular about reading a hard copy of a newspaper, not the e-newspaper. Hii mambo ya technology. Like this song, I should have sent it to the Kenyans earlier so that we could sing it digitally. We were trying to get it so that we transfer it to the computer here and project it, then sing. When I found they were wasting my time, I told them, stop it. I'll just indicate we have a song. That's the generation we belong to. There is political corruption. Candidates are currently campaigning. Those of you who come from Kenya, if you see our TV in the evening or newspapers, it's politics. Today in the Standard, the headline is Raila's options. BBI was being celebrated yesterday. If it collapses, what are the options? Today, people are going to their ethnic groups to mobilize for political office. If you have nobody of your own, you people have problems. You know, people are mobilizing. So during mobilization, these fellows you see working with, for example, presidential candidates, actually donate money. And nothing comes before something. The money they are giving is an investment. When their candidate wins, they become the suppliers. Like in Kenya here, if you became a supplier of the military, don't go for many things, just supply cereals. Or the group called the National Youth Service, supply cereals and boots, you know, the uniforms. You will never be a poor person again. And because you are a friend of the president, the agency's prices are going to be exaggerated. So what we are calling political corruption is the type of corruption that is large scale, is more opaque and less reliant on day-to-day processes, and more so the ability of the political elite to capture and use resources to benefit themselves or their networks. Why do ministers want to have their tribesmen appointed as CEOs of state corporations? Why? I worked for government for 39 years. But because I was not aligned to any politician, there was no chance of me ever becoming a PS. Somebody asked me here, why were you not? I went to a county to become chairman of a county public service board. When I went for the governor had asked me to constitute a board for him, or a selection board. So I said, no, I'm also interested. He said, oh. So identify people for me. So I identified people for him. 2 professors and 3 other people. He added 2 others. When I went for the interview, the candidates, the panelists, our people had met all over, because when you stay in service for a long time, you get to know people by name. So they were calling me Simon. We had discussions. Then he called me after 5 days and said, Simon, interview results are out, but I don't think I can give you this job. I think we shall try and do something else. I said, oh, I understand. It didn't have to be me. He said, no, the results are out. Why? Because you cannot manipulate me to do the things you want me to do. You want somebody to do. I know politicians. In the last elections, there was a time I was a church elder. So in the last election of 2017, Kalonzo Musyoka, Raila Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi, and Moses Weta came to the service. Because I was the church elder, I had to receive them and we had to sit in front together. So cameras, The next thing I heard, because those things go on social media immediately, people told me, a government officer, you are already seeing politicians. Uhuru will finish you. You are serving his government and you are with these people. But you see, I grew up with Wetangula, Mukisa Kitui, and Musalia. Do I run away from them? If Uhuru came here, he would call me by name. Do I run away from him? Me, I knew him through his cousin Kungu. But the moment you follow, you see people with politicians, it's investment. And that's why we, in the public service, are supposed to be non-partisan. Because whoever becomes president, we shall translate their manifesto into government policy. And in politics, you develop hatred. You even start profiling people. And yet all of us were made by God in his own image. Then we start talking about, these ones don't deserve. Not public servants. We are happy remaining the way we are. The next item we need to look at here is the question of governance. Just statement, governance is about government. The action or manner of governing a state organization, and how do we manage those things. Corporate governance being the structures and systems of rules, practices, and processes by which an organization is directed. APAM has enabled us to look at public finance management. We were taken through the systems by Rory and the institutions. And other speakers have come talk to us. And we are looking at those because we are looking at integrity in public service systems. So corporate governance encompasses the authority, the accountability, the stewardship, the leadership, the direction and control we exercise in organizations. My elder brothers died. So when I stand here, I am an elder now. My nephews and nieces in their 40s call me to say, Uncle, what do we do about this thing here? When you want to call for negotiation of dowry, I am now an expert. I am an expert in dowry negotiation. My nephew is married a girl from Ndungamo. Ndungamo in Uganda, southwest Uganda, next to the border with Rwanda. I have gone through those areas, Masaka, Mbarara, going to that place. My niece was married in Zambia, in Kitwe. The one I told you the husband died. I know the culture of negotiating the Lubola in that area. Go to Tanzania, we have married from Moshi. Tukifika kule sisi sasa ndio wazee. Palipo na wazee jambo haliharibiki, ni sisi. We are at that level. You are looking at a structure and system of rules and practices and processes. In public service, that is what defines us. That topic did not want us to confine ourselves to public finance alone. It's our systems. So the public finance system, the public investment management system, you know those systems, provide opportunities for rent seeking. And that is why in public service, you do a risk assessment of your processes. Where are people likely to cheat? Please, for those of you who may be young officers here, the worst you can do in public service is to steal. Manipulate processes for your benefit. Like in Kenya, we have suffered terrorist attacks, not because our people are not trained. No. Our special police and special military forces are trained by the Israeli elite. They are trained by the US and the British Army. They have among the best. But how do these people get to those places? Because at the border, a Kenyan immigration officer facilitates the issuing of a passport to a non-citizen. At the border, a Kenyan security agent allows a non-citizen, because they have received little money, they say, after all, I am very poorly paid. If this person is giving me 1 million, 1 million is a dream for me. I receive it today, whatever happens tomorrow, that is public service. I am not going to present to you a blueprint on how do we stop corruption, because our various countries have those strategies. You know, we have. All countries have wonderful strategies. And if you want to look at a country with a lot of those things, come to Kenya. We make retreats and develop wonderful papers. Where are we? We must balance the interests of stakeholders in an organization. So my introduction to this unit, and I'll be nearly there so that we have a discussion, is until recent years, some economists presented what would be called a romantic view of corruption. Such a view made corruption seem almost a virtuous activity. There is a book written on Kenya called "It Is Our Turn to Eat." In this country, we fight on the basis of tribes to have our own tribesman ascend to the highest office, because when he becomes the president, I will become the PS. I'll become one of the parastatals where you need to become the CEO is here, the Kenya Ports Authority. Here. If you become the MD of Kenya Ports Authority and you go home a poor man, you are a cursed person. Umeladia masikio. You are very stupid. If my people, where I was born, if Dr. Mohisa Kitui becomes a president, if Moses Wetangula becomes president, or Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, or Atwoli, you know Atwoli? My friends, you will never see me on this podium here again. I will be jet set. I'll be the main supplier of the military in this country. I am likely to, I'll get a job in State House. That's what we do, eh? We are not looking at people for service. Even the politics is turned into what opportunities do we have through that person. So we celebrate corruption. I know those of you are in Kenya here and have lived for a long time. There is a saying of a leader who used to tell people, watu wangu, when somebody has slaughtered a cow, do you go cutting horns again and hoofs? When a cow has been slaughtered for you to take meat, do you go for the hoofs and horns? You look for the fatty parts. You know, take an axe. People are being encouraged to actually steal from the government because it's your opportunity. We celebrated corruption. Our turn to it. We are saying, for example, it was argued that corruption oiled the economic mechanism, or it greased the economic wheel. and made economies more efficient by removing rigidities which put obstacles to investment and economic activity. What do you want? You want a passport? Just come. You know, small money, eh? And once they give money, instead of you queuing for a long time, things are done for you now. That is what corruption was able to do. It unlocked processes that would have been very hard for you. So we celebrated corruption. Some have argued that corruption allocated investment to the most efficient uses, because the most efficient investors would be able to pay the highest bribes. In Kenya, you no longer see people going to see the president. I was a mature person in the first republic we had. And there was no investor who came to this country without paying a courtesy call on the Minister for Commerce and Industry. And that minister would organize for this investor to also pay a courtesy call on the president. And in their project proposals, they always had something called facilitation fee. Those of you who do proposals in government, the British practice, Zambia, Ghana, we come from that background. Whenever we did a budget, there was always a percentage you put there called contingency. Where did it come from? What was the contingent that was not predictable at the beginning? That was money for the big persons to eat. Corruption. Corruption became a way of life. We inbuilt it in our practices, including budgets. There was always a provision for facilitation. Ya mukubwa. This is for the big man. You want to establish a factory here? Yes. You must see the big man. Has he talked? Has he said yes? And if the big man has received his, that was him. For these other things to move again, we are also here. That is how we celebrated corruption. And our salaries were very low. Our facilities, toilet facilities, office facilities were derelict. Even having a water dispenser with water was a luxury for civil servants. It was a common practice in the public services for civil servants to have collars that were worn out. You turn them over, turn them round. The shoes would be worn, get a tire. It wasn't prestigious for civil servants to have designer shoes. How? But when we worked, you see, like, there are people in immigration. There were people in the police service. The Kenya Ports Authority, port police, officers of the police who were posted to work at the port did not want to be transferred. In fact, there was a religious Mukamba man who was brought to the port here as in charge of the port police. And on the second evening, an Asian family visited him in the house with a briefcase. And they said, this is for mama. A briefcase. So this guy thought this was an innocent visitor. When they received the briefcase, when they opened, it was full of money. The current governor in Garissa was the DC here. Korana was the DC here. That man went and said, I can't stay here. He surrendered that suitcase. This is a bribe. He refused. And he was taken out the third day. He refused to receive money. If it were you, would you really lose? Had you stolen anything? Kama pahadi yako imekuja kwako, an opportunity comes only once. How could you lose opportunities such as that? You have not stolen, so how can you be accused of corruption when you have not done anybody a favor? But they are preparing the way. They are preparing a way for contraband goods. These fake things we come from this side that come through the ports, he was going to facilitate. Finally, it was even argued that corruption made it possible for the government to keep wages low. Because of the bribes that the public sector employees received, made them accept lower wages. Hata kama serikali haitulipi vizuri, lakini sisi tunapata bakshishi yetu. So we did agitate for higher wages because government sort of didn't pay attention to corruption. Low wages allowed taxes to remain low. Because people don't earn high wages, taxes remain low. What government collects is very low. And low taxes cannot stimulate growth. This romantic view of corruption has been replaced in more recent years by a more realistic and much less favorable view. In fact, the more recent view is that rather than being the oil that lubricates the economic mechanism, corruption is the rust that slows it down. Any people who may want to share with us the experiences of corruption? It's an open one. Anybody wants to share with us something about this thing, my introduction about corruption? You know, if you want corruption to be fought and defeated, we are giving testimonies. But where you have committed a sin, that he who has never committed sin should cast the first stone. Let us be not in that group. That I cannot talk about corruption because, you know, this is my way of life. Any comment about our corruption, or do we proceed? You are waiting for a space where you can now talk. Don't tell me that also in APAM, you cannot receive a bribe. You can allow participants here not to pay the full fees. Because they are paying for their own accommodation. Whatever they have, half of the fee they give you. But you tell them now, if you pay this, no receipt. I used to be here, this place. Yes, Alex can remember. There's an accounts office there. There was a time I brought a church group to meet here. And I paid money for their accommodation and meals. And the accountant told me, the receipts are finished. Come back later. So when I went back later, he wrote the receipt with the actual amount I had paid. That's the receipt which was issued to me. But he did not put a cap on paper. So the other that remained in the book, he took another paper, now wrote that instead of the amount I had paid only 10% of that figure. So something struck me and told me, why did he not give me a receipt initially? So I took this original receipt of mine and went to the office because I was a member of staff and he had been my student. He did not suspect anything. I looked at the duplicate receipts. He did not know I was looking for that information. So I came across, I had paid 150,000 shillings. He gave me a receipt for 150,000 shillings. But what was in the receipt book was 15,000 shillings. So I went away, my people finished here and went away. I went back to him and told him, the money I paid here was never received by government. He said, I gave you a receipt. I said, yes, you gave me a receipt, but look at this folio in your receipt book. Bring it. Mulikula hii pesa. Have you told wakubwa? Have you told them? I said, this is theft. That money must be receipted. He never trusted me again. He feared. How many of you come from county governments here? Geoffrey Omulai, the former minister in Kakamega County Government, was with me here. We used to take students from here to Malindi, and we would ask for money here for entertainment of students. The actual amount required was 20,000 shillings those years. But the people used to carry 100,000 shillings. So we had a staff meeting, senior staff meeting in this building. There's a boardroom at the top. So Omulai stood up and said, we used to have not a director, we used to have a principal. Mr. Principal, there is something I need to bring to your attention. People went totally silent. People here take students to Malindi. The cost of that trip is 20,000 bob. But they always request for 100,000. 80,000 disappears. Omulai was then the chairman of the Kenya Revenue Authority appeals board here. He was a CPA. So the priest said, what? Mrs. Mohoro was a Christian. She used to preach. Mrs. Mohoro raised her hand and said, yes, sir, I want to agree with the Geoffrey. These lecturers are stealing money. For me, I refused to take students because if you made a claim and brought receipts that reflected the truth, the colleagues would kill you. So whenever it was my turn, I allowed somebody else to take students. Because how can I cheat when I have not used that money? We, in positions of leadership, can create that culture in organizations. It's the culture, it's the change of the mind. Look at the Kenya policemen. In the last 5 years, policemen are like in a hurry. Traffic police. When you travel from here going to Nakuru, or even in town here, they don't stop any other public service vehicle. It is matatus and lorries. And all they receive is 100 shillings. And you find 15 of them, 5 on this side and 5 on this side. 2 kilometers down the road, another contingent of policemen. They are not providing a service. I went to see the current Inspector General of Police, Mutiabai, when he was working with Dr. Kanambiu. Kanambiu was his PA. And we had a discussion because we were doing some research for the National Crime Research Center. And we told him, corruption among policemen is still rampant. He said, no. We told him, we are telling you what we have seen. Listen to us, unless you are being compromised. Because they say, in a police, in an area, the commandant must receive from each of those roadblocks money on a daily basis. Corruption being celebrated and the view we have of corruption. Some of us who work in such offices do the same. Once bureaucrats realize that they can take advantage of regulations, it has been argued that rigidities created by regulations are not given, but are rather man-created and thus endogenous to the system. We use regulations, Public Finance Management Act, the procurement plan. When we want to commit frauds in procurement, we inbuild that in the procurement plan. When we want to steal through the budget, we inbuild it in the budget. And that's why literature proposes that when you are doing budgets, there must be public participation. When there is implementation, there must be public participation because people will say, the money we asked for was for 1, 2, 3, and it was given. So where are we using it? If oversight is provided by stakeholders, we can actually limit what we do in those processes. If I was to look at the process of public finance, that's life cycle, we can look at how corruption is inbuilt in the processes. Once we, bureaucrats, realize that we can take advantage of regulations, we produce more of those regulations. COVID-19. COVID. When the COVID regulations began, you know what happened in Kenya? There were people who were going to Dubai, and there were centers in Nairobi where people were issuing fake certificates until Kenyans were arrested. Kenyans were arrested in Dubai. If you go to America or go to Amsterdam and you're from here, they must check it because you are likely to cheat. Look at that, the way we are looked at. That you are likely to be lying. Kenya and our friends from the West. Our friends from the West. Ourselves and them. Are you from Kenya? Yeah. Where else? I come from the other big country, okay? Very negative image of who we are. So that if we require certificates, even certificates become fake. You want a medical certificate, did you see recently in Kenya, a pilot of the police air wing? A pilot was somebody who had failed exams. You saw it? Because we use regulations. So where we have regulations, corruption thrives. Because public servants are likely to have seen opportunities. You want a certificate? Which one? Masters. From which university? They give. Even here, University of Nairobi certificates are on River Road. Alex, in the church, I interviewed a pastor whose English was very bad. But in Form 4, he had got a B. So I was saying, Pastor, you got a B in Form 4. I wanted to ask him, but your English does not match. Then there was a promotion. He came with a bachelor's degree certificate from St. Paul's University, theology. So we interviewed him, but I sent it to St. Paul's. They authenticated and said it was okay. Then 2 years down the road, there was another interview. Now he came with a bachelor's degree, which he did not produce at the previous interview. But now he had a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Nairobi. I looked at this thing here, but it had those watermarks. I said, hey, this thing here, a pastor, a man of the collar. So we sent it to the University of Nairobi registrar exams. The deputy registrar of exams was a member of our church, fortunately. When she saw our letter, she took interest. They went through their system and they had never issued such a certificate. I told the personnel committee of the church to meet. His name came to us. We fired him. We fired him, and I told the other pastor, you see, even a pastor, because of the need for a certificate, can cheat. So the regulations we have are a breeding ground for corruption in the public service. What Alex was trying to tell us is part of the attempts in dealing with the corruption. And yet, like what somebody said, systems can still also be manipulated. There will thus be more regulations, and those will probably become less transparent. The highest bribes will be paid not necessarily by the most efficient at producing, but by those most efficient at rent seeking. Whoever pays the bribe gets the opportunities. Furthermore, the potentially more able individuals will channel their energies towards rent seeking rather than towards socially productive activities. That is the effect of corruption. It has also been pointed out that corruption is contagious. Ulipatako? Ulikurana? Hakuna mtu alikushika? Let me also try my chance. So because somebody next to you stole using a public office and they were not arrested, what happens to you? You try your luck. If you can't beat them, you join them. So because you went to the office, like the younger man, this one here, like this generation, because he works with me in the office and he sees what I do, what stops him from doing it? And I move around here with a big vehicle, I live big. They also admire it. But it's possible to also role model them and say you can live honest lives and be happy. You can still be a very happy person. What factors contribute to corruption? Among those that have direct impact include regulations and authorizations. My signature doesn't just go for nothing. Complex tax systems. So complex that it's annoying. What can I pay to clear this thing? Instead of you paying 20 million, pay 8, pay 5 officially and give me 3. Because it's complex. Government spending decisions. Where government decides the big 4. Like Uhuru Kenyatta said, Kenya, the big 4. The rent seekers went for those big 4. That is where they started now looking for money. Because government money will go into those areas. We have public provision of goods and services at below market prices. You collude with the suppliers, situations in which public employees have discretionary power. I told you I used to exercise discretionary power. It's a very, very risky area because people can easily manipulate those opportunities and seek bribes so that they become rich. They need to finance political parties. This is what we have, political party financing. And those of you coming from Kenya, we can actually tell you the parastatal chiefs who work with presidential candidates and what it means to the institutions. When you see them accompanying a presidential candidate, where is Alex? The governors you see accompanying presidential candidates are actually stealing from counties today, investing in tomorrow. The sponsorship of political parties is an area of great corruption. Indirect causes of corruption will be the quality of bureaucracy. If you are mediocre people, very highly qualified and professional persons who are subject to codes of conduct are unlikely to get into those things. But somebody who is incompetent is likely to continue bribing the superiors for him to retain the position, to give favors to customers so that they praise you and say, that is the best person we ever have had. Because you are mediocre. You know, if you are mediocre, you are likely to be compromised. If you don't qualify for the office you hold, you will easily be manipulated by your top and by clients. And you do things for clients that are illegal because you want to be popular. We have the level of public wages. When wages are low, those of you who come from our country here, there was one person called Joseph Kakuthi. Kakuthi was a provincial commissioner. He used to come here because he became our PS in DPM. And we used to have 400 members of staff here, so I knew every staff member here by name, by 3 names. So whenever Kakuthi came, he would say he wants Simon to introduce staff members. So I would introduce all staff members, including their children and spouses who are not staff members here, but I knew them by name. And Kakuthi would be very happy. We had a meeting with him and said, PS, one of the most annoying things, now that you have come here, for example, the Kenyan delegation, when you are here, instead of attending to this thing, you would be very busy walking out there in the restaurants and others to give you receipts. So that when you go back to the office, you account for money. When you go on leave, you are supposed to bring a letter from the chief. So we went to the local areas here and met our own rubber stamps and became the chiefs. So we used to sign letters to say, I am the chief. You know, we used to do those things. We came from that background of those many rules because wages were very low. We were cheating. Today, because we are paid well, why should I cheat? If I am here today and I am recalled to go to Nairobi, then the money that has been paid to me for daily subsistence allowance up to Sunday, I will surrender the money for the period after today. Because I know I have opportunities. But because wages were very low, we cheated, we behaved badly. There was a time I came from here and went to Nairobi with a friend of mine. We were teaching here. And he went to River Road, slept in a place where he would pay 300. When we were supposed to stay at the Ambassador, we used to pay 1,500 at Ambassador. He went and paid 300. When he was asleep, where he slept, a thief came in the night with a hook, some long wire, and removed his trousers and shirt. And the bag he had put on a chair in that small hotel room and took them away. This man was all in a pair of shorts and a vest. Such a poor public servant is likely to be lowered. Low wages. Any bribe anybody offers improves your current wages. Just give me what you have. What do you have? I have 1,000. Later. Low wages entice people into accepting bribes. Number 3, institutional controls, both internal and external. When they are weak, this group, APAM, for those of you who have brought cash, APAM reluctantly receives money from you. They prefer money being wired into their account. Because Julie is here, and then you bring her the money. It's not in kwacha. The money you brought is not in kwacha. The money you brought is in dollars. They didn't bring the bear. You didn't bring a bear here. You brought dollars, eh? Julie, you have been paid in dollars. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. What systems do we have? If systems are, even this food, there used to be a woman in the kitchen here. She was a single mother. The salaries were very low, and they used to do a lot of work. So she once stole meat, and there was a principal here called E.G. So E.G. used to hover, he lives in the US today, hover around this gate. So when he saw that mama, he suspected she had stolen the meat. She had put meat into her costume. Then she walked, when she saw E.G. was following her, she crossed to YMCA. There's a YMCA hostel here. There used to be those telephone booths. She very quickly ran into the telephone booth. When EG ran to where she was, she pushed the meat and it fell down. So EG did not know that the meat had fallen down. So he tracked her. There used to be administration police officers here. They brought her here. EG thought now he had caught her with the meat. When they took her to an office, she said, "You are saying I'm stolen. Where? Where?" So they took off her dress and she remained with the inside one. And it was bloody. Who would want to go beyond a bloody one that is seen from outside? she was, but her meat was there. Low wages, causing people to go to very embarrassing situations of stealing and keeping meat in their costumes. When we pay people very badly, they are likely to be tempted. The penalty system is not serious. Transparency of rules, laws, and processes. The leadership. If the leaders are eating, who are we not to eat? And it's here. People are saying, wakubwa wenyewe wanakula, kwa nini mimi? So, prevention and combating corruption. By the way, what you're going to get is slides for each of those. But this is just a summary so that we make it short because we need to have an engagement. The issue of development and enforcement of codes of conduct. In Kenya, Article 232 is on public service values and principles. All public servants, particularly those who belong to professional bodies, subscribe to a code of conduct. If you breach the requirements of your code, you actually lose your job. So Alex is a CPA. There's a code of conduct for Alex and Rory. If CASA ISPAC realizes they have breached the code, they withdraw membership. And because in the regulations of the Republic, to hold that office you must be a CPA. The loss of your membership means automatic loss of your job. That is what we are doing today. In Kenya today, people who belong to professional associations, their respective public service agencies pay their annual membership subscriptions for professional bodies. Because the code of conduct for professional bodies is now being used to enforce requirements of officers holding such positions. So if we are talking about requirements, it's in our Constitution, Article 232, for example, on public service values and principles. Number 2, we have these bodies all over. The setting up of national anti-corruption agencies, they're all over. Is there anybody from national, the anti-corruption? Yeah. How many did you come? How many are you? You are just one? Oh. Yes. I used to work with them. I wanted because I used to work with them. Whenever government formulates new regulations, we used to work with them to first of all assess and look at the potential for corruption. They would come to find out these regulations. Where are we likely to have manipulation? So for them, they know. When they go for the education, they know. They also require all state agencies to identify in their processes areas most prone to corruption and what it is they have done. So the issue of combating corruption, for example, the requirements of the Anti-Corruption Commission in this country. And their work is not just arresting people who have received bribes. Even if the allegations, I was summoned by them. I was summoned by your people 5 years ago. We went for interviews and interviewed a candidate. And somebody reported that we had received a bribe. All panelists were independently invited by the Anti-Corruption Commission to be taken through a process. And when we confirmed these are the marks I scored, when they were aggregated, yes, I also countersigned, and this was the ranking, they are satisfied. They will look at how processes have been manipulated. So we have national anti-corruption agencies. We may want to share with you, by the way, tomorrow. We may want to share country experiences about your operations and the challenges you face. Because people who don't work with you think you are toothless, you are useless, we don't deserve you. You know, that's what people think. because they think everybody must be held to the court of law and jailed. So, to combat corruption, agencies have been established in respective countries. We have accountability systems, institutional frameworks, legislation, and policies. Like when I retired 2 years ago, there are forms we fill to say what assets I had when I was retiring. If 3 years after retirement, I acquire assets that are beyond what I got as pension, it means I had stolen the money and I was keeping it somewhere. Disclosure. Where has it come from? The only people who operated a system that was really good here was the late Dr. Julius Kabarake Nyerere. And Benjamin Mkapa made it even stronger when he was president in Tanzania. The issue of transparency. We have a declaration of wealth in Kenya. It's a requirement by law under legislation. But we don't do it very well. The declaration of wealth is confidential. Nobody assesses those records. Why don't we make them public? Why? A minister, somebody who was using a public bus, becomes a minister in Kenya, and for a period of 5 years, that person does not go home using a private vehicle. These days in Kenya, the mode of transport is a helicopter. Where are you getting money from? Are you so supernatural that because you became a minister, you started making super profits? Lifestyle. Even me, if you make me a minister today, I will not even be able to walk. It'll be a strange weight. I will not go to eat my lunch where I go. It will change. Not necessarily on common expense, but I can afford. My proposal here is that we need to look at very serious life audits and action taken when we think things are not right. The question of international conventions. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have slides for each of these. A number of them. But I was using this summary because I want us to have an appreciation of the African Union Convention on Prevention and Combating of Corruption. It takes care of what was indicated in that program. Umesongesha hapo? That's why ngoja hapo kwanza. Ngoja. Yeah. You see, all I can do for this young man is to praise that God blesses him, that he prospers as he grows in the service, that he grows into wisdom, that he'll be a great man in the public service. You see, that's what I'm supposed to do. Not to give him money. I'm supposed to place you the way I've done, and I become your mentor. And you'll be a great success. You can see I've already placed him. This one will never steal. The African Union Commission has a convention on preventing and combating corruption. I just want to run us through. I know some countries may not have ratified, but Kenya has ratified this. If you look at it's not here, the Attorney General's office at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because I normally am privy to the annual reports we submit on various conventions we have ratified as a country through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have, it's not very fast like the other one. This original literature of preamble, I'm not going to read, but it will be part of what Julie is going to give you. I know you're going to get it from the website, but what about if somebody makes it easy for you just to get? So you'll get a copy of this convention here. I am interested in the objectives of this convention and some of the articles, not all of them. Article 1 is about purposes of this convention and the chairperson of the commission, your definitions, what confiscation is, what corruption in the African Union is. It is the acts and practices including related offenses proscribed in this convention. A court of law, executive council, words like illicit enrichment means the significant increase in the assets of a public official or any other. I am very happy my friend called Muthoni wa Kimani. Muthoni wa Kimani is dealing with the people here. Those who are accused of corruption. Muthoni wa Kimani arrives and she freezes your accounts and she's getting a lot of those properties seized by the state. I think that's going to be the best. You can't be stealing from us to appear like you are a most successful, hard-working person when you are a public thief. So the issue of illicit is very critical for us in the management of corruption issues. Then you have private sector, they look at proceeds of corruption, public official ourselves. I am interested not in those, I'm interested in this article here. The article of objectives. That the objectives of this convention are to promote and strengthen the development in Africa by each state party of mechanisms required to prevent. Alex told you can never stop corruption. It is as old as man. You know, man by nature looks for opportunities. What can I get here? They always look for opportunities. When somebody is cooking very good food, you admire it. But because it's far from you, you can't. But if you are given a chance, you would test it. As a small child, my mother we didn't have a fridge in the 60s. So my mother used to boil milk, and they would put in a wooden cupboard. And there was cream that used to form at the top. And I loved that cream. And my mother would not allow me. So I would always come from school running and put a stool. And then I climb on the stool to get the cream, using a piece of wood, to get the cream. Once I finish, I would be very happy because I have eaten the cream. One day, I went, and when I was climbing on the stool, when I tried to get the pan, the sufuria on which the milk was, the stool slid, and all the milk poured on me. And when I was waking up, my mother appeared, and he told me what happened. I told her, the sufuria, the pan, ran away from the cupboard and fell on me. Then she said, how could it run on its own? I said, I don't know, Mama. But if the door was locked, how did it come out? I said, in fact, I'm surprised, Mama. She said, now I have discovered the person who has been stealing the milk. Even as young as that in the village, you are corrupt. The things we think is not a big deal, but not allowed. We want to promote, facilitate, regulate cooperation among state parties to ensure effectiveness. One of those people, when Trump talked to his followers and they went to the Congress, one of those people was hiding in Kenya. He was deported 2 days ago. Agreements that allow us to deal with the persons involved in crime. You can't steal from Ethiopia to come and hide in Nairobi. We shall take you back. You can't steal from Uganda because you are putting up the Buchakali hydropower thing. You will be taken back. There is a friend of mine who stole gold from Tanzania. 100 billion worth of gold. He was repatriated. When I was called for a meeting at City Hall by his friends that we raise money for a lawyer's fees, I disappeared. He stole gold. And some years back he bought a house in Karen. I used to say, hey, this guy works very hard. So if he's being arrested, so he was making money through theft. I did not go to fundraise to have him released. We want to coordinate and harmonize policies. That is what African Union wants us to do. They want us to promote socio-economic development by removing obstacles to enjoyment of economic, social, and cultural rights. Countries like Rwanda, countries like Burundi that are landlocked. In West Africa, you have countries like Mali, countries like Mali, that rely on the boat of Agra for goods to go inland. And you in Ghana are asking for bribes, making life very difficult for them. Uganda relies on Dar es Salaam and Mombasa. We used to take 28 days to clear the goods from the port of Mombasa to Kampala. Since Uhuru came, that has been reduced to 3 days. People have been making noise. We now put containers on the train from the port. They go up to Naivasha, but now, by July this year, those goods will be ending up in Kisumu, Lake Victoria. Uganda has its steamers, Kenya has Uhuru. They will be transporting goods to Uganda and Rwanda. We shall preserve our roads. We shall save Ugandans from the bribes they have to pay policemen on the road as their trailers move all the way from Mombasa to Kampala. People going to DRC Congo. That is why we must fight corruption. We want to establish necessary conditions to foster transparency. Article number 3 is about the principles Article number 4 is about where will it apply. The convention is applicable to acts of corruption and related offenses like solicitation or acceptance directly or indirectly by a public official. So the heads of state at the African Union have already agreed on what we need to do as individual countries to prevent and combat corruption. What do we need to do? And these things have been domesticated by a lot of countries, offering or granting directly or indirectly to a public official, even if you give me money, is a bribe. To act, any act or omission in discharge is corruption. So they will give you those things about what is it that is defined as corruption. Article number 5 is about legislative and other measures that we need to put in place. So the African Union has agreed on we need to adopt legislative and other measures that are required to establish as offenses acts mentioned in Article 4, paragraph 1, the ones that have been defined, to strengthen national control measures to ensure that the setting up and operations of foreign companies in the territory of a state party. Kenya, look at the case of SGR. You know, we have been asking who is this company managing SGR? That information was not coming out. But now, Cabinet made a decision. Kenya Railways Corporation is taking over the management of SGR. Who are these hidden persons who are managing SGR? You know, they are Kenyans. You remember the company called Mobitech, the one of Safaricom? Who is that company? The cabinet made a decision to deal with those issues. So, we need to look at what countries are supposed to do by law to deal with corruption. I am using this to demonstrate to you that decisions have been made at very high levels on mechanisms that we need to look at in management of this laundering and proceeds of corruption. My friend, I was telling you, Uhuru returned him to Tanzania because that case was with the president in Tanzania, President Kikwete Chekwaya. Before he left, that case had been on. When this person was arrested, Kenya's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Monica Juma, is the one who took the gold which had been impounded in Nairobi back to Dar es Salaam. So let people know it's painful to steal. For civil servants, you forfeit what you have. You may have invested, but because you cannot explain, you forfeit all of it. You retire and go home a pauper. Even if you are 60 years and you stole when you were in the office and you have retired, we need to jail you. You need to die as a thief because you are a thief. Judy, I'm not saying you don't come to join the civil service. The fight against corruption and related offenses in the public service, this is now the one I want to finish with because there are many sections. Mine is for us to have an appreciation that there are prescriptions by the African Union on what we need to do. This particular one says, in order to combat corruption and related offenses in the public service, state parties commit themselves to 1, require all or designated public officials to declare their assets at the time of assumption of office, during and after their term of office in the public service. Kenya's parliament, are there people from parliament here? Parliament? Msiogope, ninyi ni shirika letu. Si hata sisi ni watu wa bunge. You remember when we were looking at the act for chapter 6 of the Constitution, the original draft was watered down. You know it was watered down? Because that is where we must begin from. If the public thinks Parliament is giving itself an advantage, what will stop them from doing the same? We still have institutions that raise a lot of questions. Parliament, legislators have 3 responsibilities: oversight, representation, and legislation. 3, not implementation. There's a member of parliament in Nairobi whose name appeared in the papers as having never spoken in parliament. Then he said, kasi yangu inaonekana kwa vitendo. I asked him, vitendo gani? Ninajenga mashule. Nikamwambia, no, hiyo si kasi yako. Kujenga mashule si kasi yako.
Kazi ya mjumbe wa bunge ni utetesi, uwakilishi na uangalizi, oversight. You see, many of them use CDF to say that's the work they are doing. So, public officials, we need to declare our assets. Even for those of you who are working in the public service, when you acquire assets, please, permanent assets, open files, open your own registers. Because at one time you'll be called upon to say where it came from. If you're acquiring land, have the documents. If you're acquiring a house, have the agreements and show where the money came from. Number two, we need to create an internal committee or a similar body mandated to establish a code of conduct. We already have a public service code of conduct to monitor your implementation. We have requirements by the Public Officer Ethics Act that when you go to a trip, for example, and you get gifts, you declare them. There must be a register. Number three, that we need to develop disciplinary measures and investigation procedures in corruption and related offenses with a view to keeping up with the technology. A lot of public sector leaders cannot do this because they themselves are victims. So how can you ask people when you are a victim yourself? I am the director here. My accounts clerk is the one who facilitates my stealing. How can I demand? In fact, when I ask him, he tells the others, but he also stole yesterday. And because the big man hears that everybody knows he stole, he can't follow it up. So those of us at the helm must be blemishless. We must be beyond reproach. We need to ensure transparency, equity, and efficiency in the management of tendering and hiring procedures in the public service. Subject to the provisions of domestic legislation, any immunity granted to public officials shall not be an obstacle to the investigation of allegations against and the prosecution of such officials. We may not investigate Uhuru Kenyatta today, but the moment he leaves office next year, the law does not exclude him. We can investigate him. This is what we need to be all aware of. Because the fight against corruption is not by the leaders. All of us must be in the forefront to prevent and combat corruption. This thing has more articles, but I wanted to use this just to have an appreciation of what the African Union members have done. And I am alive to the fact that individual countries have their own anti-corruption agencies. Alex, can I now invite you so that you can now come and talk to our colleagues here as I take a sip of water? Can you give me a clap? Use yours. Use yours. This one here can give you that thing.
Let's appreciate Mr. Simon again.